A man lies on a bed of arrows and refuses to leave this world. Not for a night, not for a week, for 58 long days, he simply waits, because he already chose the hour his breath would finally loosen. And the strangest part is this: both armies want him gone, both armies love him anyway. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're on the field of Kurukshetra, not the Kurukshetra of painted scrolls and clean museum silence. The real one. Dust so fine it finds the corners of your eyes. Heat that sits on your shoulders like a heavy shawl. The air is thick with sweat, trampled grass, and the sharp metallic smell of weapons warmed by the sun. Somewhere nearby, a horse snorts, nervous. You hear the clink of armor as a man shifts his weight, the slow creak of leather straps, and, under it all, that endless background sound. Thousands of lives held tight inside their own chests, breathing too fast. This is the 10th day. Your body already feels older than it did when you arrived. Your hands are rough from gripping what you have to grip. Your mouth tastes like dust and old fear. Even your thoughts feel tired, like they've been marching. And still, the lines are drawn again. Two oceans of men and banners face each other across the sacred earth. Elephants sway, blinking slowly, as if they didn't agree to any of this. Chariots stand ready, wheels half sunk in churned soil. Bowstrings hum softly when fingers test them. Some warriors murmur prayers. Some stare ahead with a strange calm, like sleepwalkers who happen to be armed. And then you feel it before you see it. That presence, Bhishma. He is not young. That's the first shocking thing. Everyone around you is worn down, but he looks carved out of something older than exhaustion. White hair pulled back, skin darkened by sun and wind, eyes steady as deep water. He stands there like a vow wearing armor. There are men on both sides who learned to stand straight because he once told them to. There are kings who still hear his voice when they raise a weapon. There are soldiers who have never met him and still feel safer when his banner is nearby. The grandfather, they call him. Which is sweet until you remember this is an ancient family gathering where everyone showed up with chariots. A conch shell sounds, long and low. Another answers. The notes roll across the field, over heads and flags, over the elephants' painted foreheads. The sound presses against your ribs and makes your heart want to sprint ahead of you. And the day begins again. You watch Bhishma mount his chariot. His charioteer tightens the reins. The horses toss their heads, their manes dusty and braided. Bhishma lifts his bow with an ease that makes the younger warriors look like they're lifting stones. You think, absurdly, about your own bed. Soft, flat, quiet. Then you look down at the ground. You're standing on clods of earth chewed up by wheels and hooves. You realize you'd be thrilled to find even a half-decent patch of shade. Luxury out here is simply shade, a breath of cool, a moment where the sun forgets you. The chariot surges forward. The Kuru host seems to draw courage from that one moving point, like iron pulled toward a magnet. The Pandava line tightens in response, bracing as if a storm has shifted direction. Bhishma's arrows begin to fly. You don't see them the way you see ordinary things. You feel them, the hiss of a shaft splitting hot air, The quick, clean thrum of bowstring, the startled cry of someone whose day has suddenly changed. The field ripples where he moves. Warriors scatter, regroup, scatter again. Standards dip and rise. Dust lifts in sheets, and for moments, the sun seems to dim behind a brown veil. And through it, Bhishma keeps coming. It's terrifying. It's also familiar, like watching a river do what a river has always done. It doesn't hate the bank. It doesn't love the stones. It simply moves. On the Pandava side, men glance toward one chariot in particular. Krishna is there, holding the reins. Arjuna stands beside him, the great bow Gandiva near his hand. His face is tight, not with fear, but with something more complicated. Reverence, maybe. A heaviness that sits behind the eyes, because the man cutting through their lines is the same man who once lifted them as children. You remember the stories you've heard in the camps at night, when men try to soften war with words, how Bhishma raised princes from both branches of the family, how he taught them how to hold a bow, how to stand in court, how to speak with honor, how he never took a throne for himself, how he never took a wife, how he made one impossible promise and then lived inside it for a lifetime. And now that promise has brought him here, to this blazing morning where the earth trembles under wheels. The battle swells, conchis cry again, drums beat like a second heart. The sound comes in waves, and you can almost imagine the field itself breathing. Inhale, shout, exhale, clash, inhale, hooves, exhale, dust. Your throat feels dry. A man passes you, carrying water in a skin bag, and you think, with a little spark of exhausted humor, that the true hero of Kurukshetra might just be the water carrier. No vows, no politics, just keeping people from collapsing in the heat. Then you see something shift at the front. A figure moves forward on the Pandava side, placed carefully like the first stone in a strange game. Shikhandi, not large like Bhima, not blazing like Arjuna, but steady, chosen. Around you, men whisper the name with unease. There is something about Shikhandi that makes even seasoned warriors glance away, as if their eyes have touched something complicated. Bhishma sees him, and you watch the old warrior hesitate. It's brief, a flicker. But on this field, a flicker is an opening. You feel the whole day tighten, like a bow being drawn back farther than it should go. Bhishma's hands remain sure. His posture remains royal. Yet something in him refuses, deep and absolute, because there is a boundary he will not cross, even here, even now. Behind Shikhandi, Arjuna's chariot rolls closer. Krishna guides it with small movements of the reins. The horses snort, foam at their mouths, stamping and restless. Arjuna's gaze is fixed ahead, as if he can't bear to blink. A gust of wind slides across the plain, lifting grit into your hair. It carries the smell of trampled flowers from garlands crushed underfoot, mixed with the harsher scents of sweat and metal for a heartbeat. The noise softens, not silence, never silence, but a lull, like the world pausing between waves. And in that lull, you understand what everyone else understands, down in their bones. This day is different. Bhishma, the shield of the Kuru line, the one man who seems impossible to overcome, is about to meet the one condition his own honor cannot fight. He will fall, but he will not leave. Not yet. The field will claim him, and still he will remain above the earth, held up by what struck him, refusing the final surrender. A warrior so stubborn that even the end must wait for his permission. And you, dusty and tired and small on the edge of history, are close enough to hear the wheels to smell the horses, to feel the heat, close enough to watch the moment the grandfather becomes something else, a man between worlds, a man who cannot die until the sun itself turns and tells him it's time. The heat of Kurukshetra fades the way a bad dream fades, slowly, unwillingly, until all that's left is the idea of dust on your tongue. And then even that slips away. Because to understand why Bhishma can lie on arrows and still refuse the final surrender, you have to go back. Back before banners and conches, back before the ground learned the taste of iron, back to a river that never stops moving, even when kings do. The Ganga is wide here, not a polite little ribbon of water, not something you hop across in the dry season. She stretches out like a road made of moonlight and mud, carrying foam and driftwood, carrying prayers, carrying the smell of wet earth that rises when the wind changes. You're standing on her bank, toes sinking into cool sand. There are reeds whispering to each other. There's a fisherman's fire somewhere behind you, smoke, salt, and something sharp that makes your nose wrinkle. And out on the water, boats slide by with that lazy confidence of people who've always belonged to a river. This is where it began, with a king who fell in love too quickly. Shantanu, ruler of Hastinapura, comes here the way thirsty men come to wells, not because anyone commanded him, because something in him aches when he's away from this water. He's older now, shoulders still broad, but there's a restlessness in him that armor can't fix. He walks the bank as if the Ganga might speak again, and once, long ago, she did. Once, the river herself rose up as a woman, cool-eyed and radiant, and Shantanu loved her like a man loves a monsoon after a cruel summer. He married her. He agreed to her strange condition, the kind you accept when you're smiling too hard to think. And for a while, he lived inside wonder. But wonder can turn sharp. Son after son was born, and one after another, the river queen carried them back into her waters. Shantanu endured until he couldn't. The day he broke his promise, his voice finally cracking. The river woman's face softened with something like pity. She left. But she left one child behind, Devavrata, a boy set carefully on the bank like a gift the river decided not to reclaim. He grew the way strong trees grow, quietly, stubbornly, with roots you couldn't see. He learned horses, chariots, bowstrings that bit into the fingers, scriptures recited at dawn when the air was still cool. He learned to stand straight without trying. And when Shantanu looked at him, the king's heart did that foolish thing hearts do. It relaxed. It believed the worst was over. Now, years later, Shantanu walks this same riverbank, and the air is thick with a different kind of trouble. Because the king has seen someone, a young woman, dark-eyed, smelling of river flowers and fish and smoke. Satyavati. She ferries people across the Ganga, and she does it with the steady hands of someone who's been underestimated all her life. There's a basket nearby, damp reeds woven tight, and the scent of fresh catch clings to everything around her. You can practically taste it in the wind. Shantanu sees her and forgets how to be a king. He forgets how to breathe like he isn't in pain. He begins visiting the river too often, lingering too long, returning to the palace with his thoughts miles away and his crown sitting slightly crooked. The servants notice. They whisper. If you're standing in the palace corridor, you feel it in the way people stop laughing when the king passes. in the way older ministers stare at the floor like it's suddenly fascinating, in the way even the torches seem to burn more quietly. And Devavrata notices too. Of course, he notices. He's the kind of son who can hear a mood before it enters the room. One evening, Shantanu sits alone longer than usual. The food cools, the lamps are trimmed. Still, the king's gaze stays fixed on nothing. Devavrata comes in, and you can feel the shift, like a steady drumbeat entering a song that's losing its rhythm. He doesn't press, not at first, but the worry in him won't let go. He approaches with the careful respect of a prince and the stubborn tenderness of a son. And finally, Shantanu, cornered by love, admits it. He speaks of Satyavati as if saying her name hurts and heals at once. He confesses the desire to marry her, then the sorrow, because desire alone doesn't make a marriage. Satyavati's father, the fisherman chief, has his price. And it isn't gold. He wants the children of Satyavati to inherit the throne. Not Devavrata, not the prince everyone already loves, not the boy the kingdom is already leaning toward, like a field leaning toward sunrise. Shantanu says it with that bitter honesty of a man who hates his own weakness. He cannot do it. He will not steal his son's future. So he sits there, king of a vast land, and he looks stranded. And you, standing at the edge of this moment, can almost hear Devavrata's thoughts tighten like a bowstring. Because Devavrata doesn't respond the way most sons would. He doesn't erupt, he doesn't sulk, he doesn't calculate. He simply decides. The next morning, before the palace fully wakes, Devavrata leaves. No grand procession, no announcement, just the prince, a small retinue behind him, and the road unrolling under hooves. The air smells of dust and neem leaves, warming in early sun. A minor bird scolds from a branch as if personally offended by this urgency. And somewhere deep in the palace, Shantanu is still sitting with his longing, not knowing his son has already picked it up and begun carrying it like a burden. By midday, you're back at the river. The Ganga glitters hard under the sun, bright enough to make you squint. Boats knock gently against posts. Men haul nets, laughing, arguing, shaking water from their arms. Someone flips a fish onto a wet plank, and it slaps, sharp, quick, almost comical in its indignation. Even in this charged moment, the riverfolk keep working. Hunger doesn't pause for royal heartbreak. Devavrata arrives at the fisherman's settlement, and the place goes a little still. Not because anyone is afraid, because presence like his changes the air. He steps onto the bank, sandals sinking slightly into damp sand. His clothes are fine, but dusty from travel. His eyes take everything in, the boats, the nets, the reed huts, the chief who stands with arms crossed like a man guarding his entire bloodline. The fisherman chief doesn't bow low. He doesn't need to. This is his domain. He hears why the prince has come, and he repeats the condition without flinching. His daughter will not be cast aside. Her children will not be made servants to another woman's son. A fair demand, if you're the one who has always had to demand fairness. And Devavrata listens, really listens, not the way princes sometimes listen, already halfway to their own answer. He listens like someone weighing each word with his breath. You can feel the warm wind off the water slide across your arms. You can smell river mud and sun-dried nets. The world is oddly ordinary around something enormous. Then Devavrata does the impossible thing. He offers the throne, not later, not as a bargaining chip, now cleanly. He says he will step aside so Satyavati's future sons can rule. The fisherman chief narrows his eyes because men who have lived by bargaining know a half offer when they hear one. He points out what Devavrata already knows. A prince who renounces the throne can still have sons, and those sons, beloved and capable, could rise like a tide. Even if Devavrata never lifts a hand against his half-brothers, ambition has other hands. Ministers, armies, whisperers in the night. A kingdom can revolt out of love as easily as out of hatred. So the fisherman chief holds the line, not cruel, just practical. Devavrata must give up more than a crown. He must give up the very possibility of heirs. And this is the moment you feel it. The breath of the river, the weight of the sun, the way even the gulls seem to circle a little quieter. Devavrata stands there, young and unbent, with the future spread out before him like a long road. He could refuse. He could return to his father and say the price was too high. No one would blame him. Kings are allowed to want. Princes are allowed to protect themselves. But Devavrata is not moving by what people allow. He is moving by love, a love so fierce it's almost reckless. And maybe you've known that kind of love, the kind that makes you do something later you will stare at in disbelief. Devavrata lifts his hand, not dramatically, just steadily, as if sealing a knot. He vows he will never marry. He vows he will never take a woman to his bed. He vows he will leave no descendants. A vow that doesn't end at one decision, but stretches across every season to come, across every lonely evening, across every moment when the palace is filled with weddings and laughter and someone says, too casually, how good his children would have been. The words go out over the river, and the world answers. For a heartbeat, the wind stills. The Ganga's surface smooths as if listening. And from above, high, unseen, yet close enough to make your skin prickle, comes a cry of approval. It isn't a human shout. It's the sound of the heavens taking notice. Flowers fall, not from any hand you can see. Soft petals drifting down, brushing Devavrata's shoulders, landing on the wet sand, riding the river's edge. The fisherman settlement stares upward, mouths slightly open. The way people stare when they've just realized they're standing in the middle of something that will be remembered. And in that falling shower, a name arrives. One word, heavy as a bell. Bhishma, the terrible one. Not terrible like cruel. Terrible like a thundercloud. Terrible like a mountain that does not move. Devavrata becomes Bhishma in that instant, not by crowning, not by conquest, but by choice. And you can feel it settle onto him, like a cloak you can't take off, like armor you can't unclasp. The fisherman chief, who had been holding the world with his stubborn demand, suddenly finds himself staring at a young man who has outbid fate. He has no further conditions. What condition can stand after that? Satyavati's marriage becomes possible. Shantanu's longing gets its answer. The river keeps flowing. But Bhishma, newly named, newly bound, turns away from the water with a different kind of silence inside him. On the return journey, the air feels hotter. The dust clings. Even the horses seem to sense something has changed, tossing their heads, snorting as if trying to shake off an invisible weight. And there's a strange, almost human humor in how life keeps happening around vows. A cartwheel breaks on the road, and some poor man curses it. Like this is the great tragedy of the day. A child runs past, chasing a goat, shouting, triumphant. Meanwhile, a prince has just given away everything most men spend their lives chasing. When Bhishma returns to the palace, Shantanu sees his son and understands before a single word is explained. The king's face tightens. Love and horror arrive together. Because Shantanu wanted happiness, he did not want this price paid by someone else. But Bhishma is calm, not smiling, not proud, just steady, like a lamp flame that doesn't flicker even when the door opens and wind rushes in. He makes his father accept it. He makes his father marry Satyavati, and the palace celebrates. Music rises, conches call, ghee lamps are lit until the corridors glow like rivers of gold. Incense curls sweetly in the air, sandalwood and jasmine, the kind that clings to your hair when you walk through it. You could stand in the courtyard and feel the warmth of the crowd, the press of silk, the glint of bangles, the happy chaos of a wedding feast. But if you look for Bhishma, he isn't at the center. He's a little to the side, watching, guarding, already becoming the pillar everyone leans on without asking if pillars get tired. And somewhere far off, beyond palace walls, the Ganga moves through moonlit darkness. Unconcerned, eternal. She has seen vows made and broken, lovers found and lost, kingdoms rise like foam and vanish like foam. She carries it all. But this vow, this one, clings. It will outlast Shantanu's happiness. It will outlast Satyavati's sons. It will stretch forward into generations that haven't even learned their names yet. And you can feel it, even now, like a distant drum. Bhishma has saved his father. Yes, he has also trapped himself inside a promise so vast it can hold a man upright on a bed of arrows. A promise that will keep him standing long after standing stops being a joy. A promise that will make him the strongest person in the room. And one day, the most helpless. Because vows don't loosen with age, they only tighten. And Bhishma, the terrible one, walks back into the palace halls with that tightening around his heart, quietly taking his place as the grandfather of a future that will break itself against him. The vow gave him everything except the one thing he needed, the freedom to act. Years begin to stack up in Hastinapura the way dust stacks on an unused throne, one thin day at a time. You walk those palace corridors with him, and you start to recognize the sounds. The soft slap of bare feet on cool stone before sunrise. The distant clang of practice weapons in the yard. The court musicians warming their throats, half asleep, like even the ragas need a moment to remember themselves. Key lamps burn with that steady, honeyed smell. And Bhishma, always a little to the side, never sprawling, never careless, becomes the hinge the whole house swings on. A prince grows into a king. A king grows old. A crown passes hands, and Bhishma stays. He watches Shantanu's line continue through Satyavati's sons, and it is not smooth. It is never smooth. One son is gone too soon, like a lamp snuffed by a sudden wind. Another follows, and the palace women stop singing at night. Even the servants begin to speak more quietly, as if sound itself might break something. You can feel it in the air, thick, tense, like the moment before monsoon rain, when the world holds its breath. Bhishma steps into that silence, the way a man steps into a river, without flinching, even when it's cold. He steadies the kingdom. He raises boys who are not his. He advises queens who have no one else to lean on. He sits through councils that last so long your knees ache just imagining them. And all the while, that vow stays wrapped around him like invisible armor. Not heavy at first, then heavier. There's even a strange, tired humor to the way everyone comes to him. When a minister panics, it's Bhishma. When a cousin sulks, it's Bhishma. When a border king rattles his saber, someone inevitably says, with the confidence of a man pointing at a mountain, that Bhishma will handle it, as if Bhishma is a tool you keep in a polished box, as if he doesn't feel every time he's taken out and used. You see him with the young princes as they grow, first clumsy, then proud, then sharp-edged. Dhritarashtra, broad-shouldered and hungry for the world he can't see. Pandu, quick and golden, moving like sunlight across the training yard. Vidura, quieter, watching everything with eyes that never miss the truth, even when no one wants the truth. The palace smells of warm milk, oiled wood, and the faint metallic bite of weapon racks. Outside, peacocks scream from the gardens like they're offended by the entire arrangement. Bhishma teaches them all the same way, patient, exacting, unyielding. His voice can still turn a room, still as a pond. But you also notice something else, if you stay close enough. He laughs less, not because he's sour, because he's careful. Every time affection rises in him, some part of him remembers, don't cling, don't claim, don't build a life you're not allowed to keep. So he becomes love with a locked door, and the kingdom keeps growing, like a tree that doesn't know it's rooted over a crack in the earth. Time passes again. Marriage alliances are arranged. Ritual fires flare, hot and fragrant with clarified butter and sacred herbs. Brides arrive wrapped in bright cloth, bangles clinking, hair scented with jasmine oil. And still, Bhishma remains what he has always been, the one who stands beside the throne, not on it. You're standing near him in the assembly hall one evening when the air is unusually cool, the kind of relief that makes everyone a little softer. Dhritarashtra sits in state, heavy with jewels and responsibility, his blank eyes turned toward the voices around him. Gandhari sits nearby, veiled, her stillness sharp as a blade, and below them a new generation begins to fill the hall like a tide. The Kauravas, so many sons you stop counting because your mind refuses to accept that one household can hold that much ambition. The Pandavas, fewer but bright, each one carrying himself as if destiny has already written his name in gold. They're boys at first, then youths, then men, and in the middle of them all is Duryodhana, like a fist that never unclenches. Bhishma sees it early. He sees how Duryodhana's smile doesn't reach his eyes. He sees how Shakuni's whispers slide in like smoke, sweet and poisonous. He sees how a harmless competition over toys becomes wrestling, then becomes rivalry, then becomes something colder. There are moments you almost want to laugh, just to keep from tightening up, because some days it's absurdly ordinary. One prince sulking because someone else's chariot horses are better groomed. Another prince complaining about the heat, like he personally plans to argue with the sun. A tutor trying to keep 10 royal youths focused, while they all secretly believe the universe should be their personal servant. But then the ordinary shifts. A prank turns sharp. A joke becomes a trap. And Bhishma stands there with all his strength, all his reputation, and that vow like a hand pressed flat against his chest. He can advise, he can warn, he can frown so hard the bravest men swallow their words. But the throne is Dhritarashtra's, and Dhritarashtra's love for his sons is a river in flood. You can stand right beside Bhishma and feel it, the frustration that never gets to become action. The sound of court is always there, conch shells on festival days, temple bells in the distance, the low murmur of petitioners. But beneath it runs a deeper sound, like a drumbeat you don't hear with your ears, the drumbeat of consequence. Then comes the invitation. A game, they call it, just a game. The hall is prepared like it's a celebration. Polished floors, rich carpets, brass lamps reflecting in rows like small steady suns. The smell of incense so thick it almost hides the sweat of too many bodies packed together. You take your place inside that crowd, shoulder to shoulder with courtiers and kings, and you feel how tense the air is. No one is breathing normally. Dice click in a wooden cup. That small sound lands louder than a cymbal. You watch Yudhishthira sit down, calm-faced, as if calm can tame what's coming. You watch Shakuni handle the dice with fingers that look lazy, almost bored. You watch Duryodhana lean forward, hungry, like a man watching a feast being carried in. And Bhishma is there. Of course he is. On the high seat, close enough to Dhritarashtra to be called a guardian, and far enough to be ignored when it matters. His hands rest on the armrests, heavy with rings. His jaw is set. The game begins to eat the room. A wager, a loss, another wager, another loss. At first, the hall rustles with excitement, the way people rustle around a street performer, amused, curious, telling themselves it's harmless. Then it stops being amusing. You can feel the shift, like a cloud passing over the sun. Yudhishthira loses wealth, then jewels, then chariots, then servants, then territory, each loss making the air thinner, as if the hall itself is running out of breath. Someone laughs too loudly, trying to keep it light. No one joins in. And then, as if the gods themselves have leaned in closer, Yudhishthira wagers his brothers, one by one, lost. The hall is very quiet now, except for the faint clink of dice and the occasional cough that sounds like panic. Bhishma's fingers tighten on the armrests until you can almost hear the leather creak. He looks older in that moment, not weaker, just older. Yudhishthira wagers himself, lost, and the room sways, not physically, but in the mind. Because if a king can lose himself like a coin, then what is anyone? Duryodhana's voice rises, pleased, demanding the last, cruelest thing. Draupadi, a queen, a woman with fire in her spine, a woman who has already endured too much because men keep calling it duty. When they send for her, the hall seems to shrink. You can smell the smoke of the lamps, sharp now, as if the oil is burning too hot. You hear silk whisper as people shift uncomfortably. No one wants to be the first to stand. Draupadi is brought in, not gently, and the sight of her, hair loosened, eyes blazing, dignity held in a body that refuses to bow, makes something crack in the hall. Bhishma's throat works as if he's trying to swallow a stone. He speaks then, not with thunder, but with strain, and you can hear it catch. He questions the wager, the right of it, the meaning of it. He asks how a person can be treated as property when the gambler himself may already have been lost. For a moment, hope flickers. Then the hall smothers it. Because Dhritarashtra does not stop it. Because Duryodhana will not stop it. Because too many men look down at their own hands as if they've suddenly become fascinating. Bhishma sits there, the strongest warrior in the room. And you feel the terrible truth. Strength is useless when it has been chained to obedience. His vow is not a sword today. It is a lock. Draupadi's protest rings through the hall, fierce enough to make your skin prickle. She demands an answer that no one wants to give. And Bhishma, who has faced armies without blinking, looks like a man staring into a fire he cannot put out. His eyes shine, not with tears spilling down, not with theatrical grief, with that tight, contained sorrow that burns hotter because it has nowhere to go. Around him, elders shift, caught between conscience and comfort. The moment stretches, and then, like rain breaking a drought, grace arrives from elsewhere. A miracle, a mercy, enough to stop the humiliation from becoming the final word of that day. But the damage has already landed. The hall will remember, the pillars will remember, Bhishma will remember most of all. Later, when the assembly empties and the lamps burn low, you can almost see the imprint of everyone's fear still sitting in the air. Bhishma remains behind, just for a while. He doesn't collapse. He doesn't rage. He simply sits, hands still on those armrests, as if he's holding himself in place by sheer will. Outside, night breathes cool over the palace gardens. Somewhere, a fountain trickles. Somewhere, a night bird calls. Inside, Bhishma's heart carries a weight that has nothing to do with armor. From that day on, the palace is never quite the same. Smiles become careful. Greetings become formal. Children grow quieter, as if they've learned that joy can be confiscated. The Pandavas are sent away, then called back, then pushed aside again, like stones in a game played by hands that refuse to admit they're gambling with real lives. Bhishma advises peace. He urges restraint. He tries to steer the chariot of the kingdom away from the cliff. But the horses are already spooked, already pulling. And the driver, blind, trembling with love and weakness, cannot see the edge. You walk with Bhishma one evening through a long corridor where moonlight lies in pale strips on the floor. The marble is cool underfoot. The air smells of lotus from the ponds outside, mixed with the faint, sour smell of old arguments. He pauses at a window and looks out toward the dark line of the Ganga in the distance. See, for a heartbeat, he is not the terrible one. He is Devavrata again. A son, a boy who made a promise at a riverbank and thought sacrifice would end the suffering, not extend it. Behind him, the palace sleeps uneasily. Ahead of him, the future sharpens. Insults will become plots. Plots will become open hatred. And hatred will finally march out onto the field at Kurukshetra under banners snapping in hot wind. Bhishma will go too. Not because his heart wants it, because his vow does, because his duty does, because the throne he swore to protect has become a grinding wheel, and he is caught inside it. And when dawn finally comes for war, when conches split the air and the ground trembles under hooves and wheels, Bhishma will be there in his chariot, white-haired, straight-backed, impossible. A grandfather carrying generations on his shoulders, the strongest man in the world. And already, in some quiet corner of him, tired beyond words. And then the war began, not with a clean trumpet note in a quiet field, with heat already pressing down, with dust already rising. It began with heat already pressing down, with dust already clinging to sweat, your throat already dry, as if the land itself won't let you speak any last-second apologies. Kurukshetra is wide and flat and sacred, and today it looks like the most crowded festival you've ever seen, except every gift is a weapon, and every prayer is someone checking the strap on a piece of armor. You stand near the front for a moment, close enough to hear the horses snort and stamp, close enough to smell their warm breath mixed with oiled leather and the sharp bite of metal. Conches roar, deep and vibrating, and the sound goes right into your ribs like a second heartbeat. Banners whip in the wind, bright cloths snapping like impatient tongues. And there he is, Bhishma, white-haired, straight-backed, eyes steady. He looks like the idea of a grandfather until you notice the bow in his hand and the way the men around him keep swallowing, like their mouths have forgotten how to be wet. His chariot rolls forward. The wheels cut lines in the dust, and something in the air changes, the way it changes when a storm finally decides to break. Day one arrives like a wave. Formations surge, then collapse, then reform, like someone keeps shaking the whole field, and the men inside are grains of rice. Bhishma moves through it as if he's not counting days at all, as if he's been doing this forever. His chariot driver keeps the horses straight, but you can feel how little straight matters once the world becomes noise. Drums pound, elephants bellow, armor clinks and sighs and scrapes, 1,000 tiny sounds layered into one restless metallic breath. And Bhishma cuts through the Pandava lines, the way a sickle cuts through wheat, not angrily, not wildly, just efficiently. A steady hand doing a job that breaks everyone's heart. You watch warriors rush him with the bravery people borrow when they're too young to understand what they're borrowing against. A few don't come back. A few stumble away, alive, shocked to still have feet under them. It happens again and again, and soon you notice something strange. Bhishma could end so many of them. Everyone knows it, but over and over, his arrows strike a banner instead of a chest. A bowstring snaps, a chariot wheel splinters, a warrior tumbles into the dust, winded and furious, and living. It's like being slapped awake without being thrown into the river. It's devastation, yes, but threaded through it is a mercy you can't quite name. By midday, your skin feels gritty, as if the dust has found a way under it. The sun glares off helmets and spear points until you have to squint, even when you don't want to look away. You can taste smoke from cooking fires behind the lines, mixing with the bitter tang of churned earth. The field smells of trampled grass, sweat, and that hot, flat scent of too many bodies gathered in one place. And still, the chariots keep rolling. You'd think people would run. Some do. Then the shame of it hits them, and they turn back, pretending they meant to circle around. War has a way of making even fear try to look dignified. Somewhere in the crush of day one, a young prince from Virata's line charges with a kind of bright, hopeful fury. Uttara. He rides as if courage alone can hold the world together. He finds Shalya, king of Madra, and for a moment it looks like youth might actually get its miracle. But Shalya answers with the calm of someone who has watched miracles fail for decades. An iron dart flashes. Uttara falls, suddenly quiet, like a lamp pinched out. The shout that rises from Virata's side is raw and jagged, and it carries across the field, even through the drums. Sweta, Virata's other son, comes like a monsoon squall. He doesn't come politely. He comes with vengeance. You can feel the emotional math happening in every chest around you. One fall becomes fuel for another charge. Grief turns into speed. Speed turns into more falling. By sunset, the day finally loosens its grip. Men stumble back to their camps with dust caked in the corners of their eyes. Water tastes like the sweetest thing ever invented. Somewhere, someone laughs too loudly at a small joke. Because if you stop making sound, you might hear your own thoughts. And Bhishma returns to his tent as calmly as if he's come back from a long ride. He sits, he eats, he says little, but the heaviness around him is its own kind of speech. Day 2. The sun climbs again, unbothered by what it's shining on. Conscious blast, and once more the field becomes a moving wall of men and animals and wood and cloth. Bhishma leads from the front because that's what he's always done. The Kaurava side surges with confidence every time his banner appears. It's like watching children relax when the strongest adult walks into the room. Except these children are armed, and the room is a battlefield. You stand close enough to see Bhishma's hands. They don't shake. You half expect his face to be fierce, but it's not. It's composed, almost gentle, as if the real battle is inside him and he refuses to let anyone see it. He takes on chariot warriors as if greeting them. He turns aside arrows that would have felled a lesser man. He sends volleys that scatter formations like frightened birds. And then, again, that odd hesitation. A perfect shot that could end a famous warrior veers and takes the crest from his helmet instead. A blow that could bring down a prince lands on the reins and the horse bolts away, dragging the chariot off course. You blink at it because you saw it. You felt it, the opening left on purpose. It's hard not to imagine him thinking, in some quiet corner of his mind, I have done enough. By day 3, exhaustion becomes a second skin. The armor feels heavier, even on the men who aren't fighting. The camp smells like stale sweat and boiled grains and the sourness of fear trying to hide under spice. You watch servants carry water skins and bundles of arrows, their faces blank with the kind of focus people get when they're trying not to feel anything at all. On the field, the rules they swore, equal against equal, no striking the weaponless, start to bend in the heat of panic. Not always, not every moment, but enough that you feel the moral ground under your feet turning soft. Bhishma still moves like an old law made flesh. He signals with his bow. He rearranges the Kaurava lines. He charges where the enemy is strong, because that's the quickest way to prove strength. And every time the Pandava side rallies, he's there. A wall, a storm, a grandfather who has decided he must be terrible because the vow will not let him be anything else. On day 4, Arjuna meets him again and again. Not in long, polite duels. Nothing stays tidy long enough for that. More like sudden collisions. A chariot breaks through the crowd. Arrows sing. Someone swerves. Someone retreats. The dust swallows the gap. And then they find each other once more. You can hear Arjuna's bowstring like a sharp bird call. You can hear Bhishma's like a deeper note, steadier, older. At one point, you watch Arjuna line up a shot so clean it feels inevitable. Bhishma is exposed for a breath. This could be the moment. Then the shot goes wide, not wildly, just wide enough. It clips a banner, it snaps a strap, it turns the chariot half a handspan. And Bhishma rolls on. People around you shout, some in triumph, some in frustration. And you realize everyone is trapped in the same strange confusion. They want him stopped, and they cannot bear the idea of stopping him. Day 5. The field looks different now, not because the land has changed, but because you've started to recognize the shapes of loss. A broken wheel half buried in dust, a fallen standard with its bright cloth dimmed under grit, an elephant standing too still as if it's forgotten why it came. The sun is brutal, but the wind is worse. It flings dust into every fold of cloth and every crease of skin. It carries the smell of trampled earth and smoke and something metallic that you don't linger on. And still, there is laughter sometimes. A charioteer ducks too late and gets smacked by his own banner pole. A warrior's proud mustache ends up powdered white with dust, making him look like he aged 50 years in one afternoon. Someone yells a heroic boast and immediately coughs because he inhaled sand. Even in the middle of terror, life insists on being ridiculous. Bhishma sees it all, and he keeps going. His chariot is everywhere. One moment he's smashing through a line of foot soldiers like wind through dry reeds. Next he's turned, facing a new threat, arrow already loosed. It's not rage driving him, it's duty. That's what makes it harder to watch, because duty does not tire the way anger tires. Duty just keeps walking. Day 6 blurs. So does day 7. The days start to feel like one long, punishing afternoon with no shade. Men drink water, and it doesn't seem to help. They eat, and it tastes like ash. They sleep and wake with their jaws clenched. Even the horses look offended by existence. And Bhishma is still a pillar in the center of it, holding up the Kaurava side by sheer presence. When he advances, the Pandava ranks tense. When he retreats, they breathe again. That's the kind of power he has. Not power that needs speeches, power that lives in the body and makes other bodies decide whether they're brave today or not. You catch sight of his face once, close enough. There's sweat on his temples, dust in the lines around his eyes, and something else, quieter. A weariness so deep it feels older than the war. Not weakness, just the look of someone doing what he must while already knowing what it will cost. By day 8, the field is a mouth that won't stop eating. Every charge feeds it. Every retreat feeds it. The sound is constant. Conchis, drums, shouting, the crack of wood, the ring of metal. Even when you step back toward the camp, you can still feel the vibration in your bones, like the earth has learned a new rhythm and refuses to forget it. At dusk, fires spring up along the lines. The smoke is blue-gray in the fading light. Ghee lamps flicker at shrines hastily set up in the dust. Men press their palms together with trembling fingers, then pick up weapons again, as if prayer is another kind of armor. On the 9th morning, something in the air feels tight, not just fear, expectation. Duryodhana rides out with a face like stone, but his eyes are too bright. The Kaurava princes look toward Bhishma, the way drowning men look toward a boat. Bhishma answers by doing what he's done all along. He leads. He strikes. He scatters. He holds the center. But the Pandavas have learned, little by little, how to breathe inside his storm. They fall back without breaking. They surge forward in strange places. They refuse to crumble neatly. You can feel the war learning itself, and you can feel Bhishma noticing. He does not look surprised. He looks almost relieved. In the thick of day 9, you see it again, the opening, a moment when a certain chariot could have been brought down and isn't. A moment when Bhishma's arrow could have ended a famous warrior, and instead it ends the fight without ending the fighter. It's like watching a man swing a sword with one hand tied behind his back, because the other hand is holding something fragile he can't put down. At sunset on the 9th day, the field finally quiets enough for you to hear the wind properly. It whistles through broken shafts and empty chariot frames. It carries the smell of cooling dust and smoke, and far away, the sweet scent of night-blooming flowers trying to pretend the world is normal. You return to the camp with everyone else, feet dragging, throats raw, shoulders aching as if the armor has crawled inside your muscles. Somewhere in the Kaurava tents, You can sense a storm gathering that has nothing to do with weather. Duryodhana's frustration has been growing like a fever. Bhishma's calm has been sitting over it like a hand over a flame. Tonight, that hand may slip. You lie down, if you can call it lying down, on hard ground softened only by a thin mat. The earth still feels warm. The sky is huge and indifferent above the lamps. And in the distance, you hear voices, low, urgent, breaking through the usual guarded discipline of a royal camp. The ninth night has begun. And somewhere nearby, the old man who cannot be defeated in clean combat is about to reveal the one clean weakness he still carries. 9 days, thousands fallen, and still Bhishma stood. That night, Krishna called a meeting, not with a trumpet blast or some royal announcement. It's quieter than that. A runner moves through the Pandava camp with a covered lamp, the flame cupped against the wind, whispering names as if the darkness itself might listen. You sit up on your thin mat, joints complaining like old doors. Around you, the camp is a low sea of shapes, rolled blankets, slumped shoulders, bows laid down like tired limbs. The air smells of smoke that has soaked into everything and of boiled grain that no one had the heart to season. Somewhere a horse stamps, impatient with human grief. You follow the moving light. The path is hard-packed earth, rutted by chariot wheels. Your feet find grit, broken straw, the occasional snapped arrow shaft that crunches like dry cane. The night breeze comes cool off the plain, brushing sweat into goose flesh. And as you walk, you feel it in everyone's silence. Not fear of battle. You've already made friends with that. This is something worse. This is the sickening respect you have for the man you need to bring down. Krishna's tent sits a little apart, not larger than the others, not gilded, not trying to impress anyone. But it pulls you like a steady drumbeat. Lamps hang at the entrance, their light turning the canvas a warm honey color. The smell near the doorway is different. Sandalwood and clarified butter, the clean scent of someone who remembers prayer even on a battlefield. You duck inside. The floor is covered with simple mats. A low table holds a brass bowl of water and a few wilted marigolds that have survived the day by sheer stubbornness. In the lamplight, everyone's face looks carved, cheekbones sharp, eyes ringed with dust. The brothers are there. Yudhishthira sits as if he's trying to keep his spine from collapsing under invisible weight. Bhima's hands flex and unflex, like he's wrestling air. Nakula and Sahadeva watch the tent flap, alert as deer. And Arjuna's bow hand rests on his knee, but you can see the tremor in the fingers. Krishna sits among them like a calm fire, not loud, not dramatic, just present. Outside, the camp murmurs with distant sobs and muffled laughter that sounds wrong, like someone laughing in a temple. A conch shell shifts in its cloth somewhere, making a faint clack that feels too sharp in the quiet. You can feel the question before anyone even shapes it. How do you end a man who does not fall? Bhishma has been a wall of iron and memory. He has been a grandfather with a bow. He has been a vow walking on 2 feet. Krishna looks at them, and it's as if he's measuring each heart. Then he speaks, softly, the way you speak near a sleeping child. He reminds them of the obvious truth everyone has been circling like a bonfire they're afraid to touch. Bhishma will not stop, not from exhaustion, not from pain, not from age. The 9th day proved it again. He could have crushed them completely, and still He held something back, as if his own hands refused to finish what his skill began. Krishna does not praise that mercy. He does not scold it either. He simply sets it down in the middle of the tent like a stone. Tomorrow it ends, or the war ends you. And then comes the harder part. Krishna tells Arjuna what Arjuna already knows in his bones, that Bhishma cannot be brought down in a clean contest of strength, not by any man who approaches him as an equal, bow to bow, chariot to chariot, pride to pride. There must be a hinge, a small turning point, a place where Bhishma's own nature makes a gap. You watch Arjuna's throat move as he swallows. The lamp flame trembles. You hear it, a tiny hiss, oil feeding fire. Krishna speaks of someone in their own ranks, someone standing just outside the circle of how the world likes to label people. Sikhandin, a warrior with a complicated birth, a life that never sat neatly inside the names people like to use. Not a man in the way Bhishma's vows recognize, not a woman in the way the battlefield expects, a life shaped by old wounds and older destiny. And behind Shikhandi's strange place in the world, Krishna pulls back another curtain. Amba, the name lands in the tent like a cold coin dropped into water. You've heard it before, half in rumor, half in campfire mutterings. A princess wronged long ago, a promise broken, a life bent out of shape by Bhishma's iron choices. A woman who left this world with one desire burning hotter than any sacrificial flame, to be the cause of Bhishma's fall. Krishna doesn't tell it like a bedtime tale. He tells it like weather. Amba has returned as Shikhandi. The old grievance has found new feet. Fate has sharpened itself into a person. And Bhishma, with all his terrible power, still carries a boundary inside him. He will not raise his weapons against one who was born female. Not even now. Not even when the drums are screaming and the ground is shaking and kings are falling like ripe fruit from a storm-tossed tree. It is, in its own way, the clean weakness Bhishma promised himself he would never abandon. You feel your own mouth go dry. The plan is suddenly there, plain as a line drawn in sand. Use Shikhandi as a shield. Let Bhishma's vow do what no army can do. Bhima shifts, and his armor gives a soft creak. He looks like a man being told he must win a wrestling match by stepping on a crack in the floor. Yudhishthira's eyes lower, as if he's already hearing tomorrow's morning songs. And Arjuna stares at the lamp flame like it has personally betrayed him. Because it's clever, and because it's ugly. A loophole, a way through that tastes like ash before you even bite down. For a moment, your mind wanders to the rules they all swore at the beginning. Equal against equal. No striking the unprepared. No cruelty disguised as skill. Men clung to those rules the way you cling to a boat in a storm. Both hands, white knuckles, pretending the sea will respect your grip. But the ninth night is not the beginning anymore. The war has already chewed through so much decency that the rules sound like something recited in a dream. Krishna watches Arjuna with the patience of someone watching a river decide whether to flood. He reminds him, without lifting his voice, that Bhishma is not only a beloved elder, he is the commander of the enemy host. Every sunrise he stands, more suns will not see the next sunset. Every day he remains unbroken. The war stretches longer, thirstier, hungrier. No one in the tent cheers. No one slaps Arjuna's shoulder with brave talk. It's too heavy for that. Outside, a gust of wind snaps the tent flap, and for a second you smell the plain beyond the lamps. Cool dirt, trampled grass, and the faint metallic tang of spent weapons lying in heaps like shed skins. Krishna's plan has been spoken. But Krishna is not a man who leaves you with only a plan. He leaves you with a task. He tells them to go to Bhishma himself. Ask him how he can be brought down. You blink at that. It feels impossible, like asking a mountain for the best place to strike it with a hammer. And yet, when you look at Arjuna's face, you understand. Bhishma has been many things: a weapon, a guardian, a prisoner of promises. But he has never been a liar. So the brothers rise. You rise with them, pulled along by the gravity of the moment. The camp outside has grown quieter, as if even the cooks and grooms have sensed something turning. They walk through rows of sleeping soldiers. Men lie with mouths open, exhaustion making them look like children. A few sit awake, staring into small coals, feeding the fire with twigs as if warmth could hold back tomorrow. Somewhere, someone coughs until it becomes a sob, then swallows it down. The night sky above is thick with stars, indifferent and bright. The moon hangs like a polished shield, and the earth below is scarred with wheel tracks that shine pale in its light. You approach Bhishma's tent, larger, steadier, guarded by men who look like they'd rather be anywhere else. Even the sentries hold themselves differently here, softer, like they're guarding not a commander, but a shrine. When the Pandavas are announced, the guards step aside. No argument, no delay. Inside, the air is warmer. The lamps burn steadier, fed with better oil. The smell is of ghee and old cloth, and the faint sweetness of medicinal herbs crushed into paste. Bhishma lies propped on cushions, armor removed, his white hair loose over his shoulders. His face is lined, but not weak. He looks like a lion resting, still dangerous, even with eyes half-lidded. And when he sees them, something like tenderness passes over him. It's a strange sight. Enemies arriving at midnight, not with weapons raised, but with bowed heads. You can feel the awkwardness in your own bones. Arjuna steps forward. He doesn't speak with the sharpness of a warrior challenging another. He speaks like a grandson, asking a grandfather to stop being unbreakable. He asks simply how Bhishma can be brought down. The old man's gaze moves over them. There is no surprise, almost relief, as if he has been waiting for them to finally ask the one question everyone has been avoiding. Bhishma tells them the answer plainly. No riddles, no drama, just a door opened. He says that if Shikhandi is placed in front, he will not strike. Not because he fears Shikhandi, but because he will not violate that boundary. And then, behind that shield, Arjuna may do what must be done. One brief sentence, quiet as a lamp being set down. Put Shikhandi in front. Arjuna's face tightens, and you see the boy in him for a heartbeat, the one who once climbed onto Bhishma's lap, sticky with sweet rice, proud of his first little bow. Now he stands on the edge of tomorrow, asked to turn his skill against the man who taught him half of it. Bhishma looks at him, and his eyes soften further, as if he is giving permission for a heartbreak. No blessings shouted, no grand gestures, just that steady gaze that says, I know what this costs. The meeting ends the way all unbearable meetings end, with everyone careful not to touch what hurts. They offer respects. Bhishma accepts them. The lamps flicker. Outside, a night bird calls once, then goes quiet, as if it regrets speaking. When you step back into the open air, the cold surprises you. It slides under your armor straps. It kisses the sweat on your neck. It makes you feel, briefly, painfully, alive. You walk back through the sleeping camp. The brothers say little. Their footsteps do most of the talking. Somewhere in the distance, a dog starts barking at nothing, then stops. A chariot wheel creaks as someone shifts in sleep. The world keeps making small, ordinary sounds, stubbornly pretending tomorrow is just another day. But you can feel it. Tomorrow the hinge turns. Tomorrow, the old man who cannot be defeated in clean combat will face the one thing even he cannot raise his bow against. And as you lie down again on your thin mat, staring up at the stars, you taste it in the back of your throat. Bitter, dry, undeniable. Ash. The plan is made. The night is almost over, and the 10th day is already walking toward you, barefoot on the cold earth. Dawn on the 10th day. The sun rose red, like it knew what was coming. The first thing you notice is the chill leaving the earth in a slow sigh. Night has been sitting on the plain like a heavy hand, and now it lifts. Dust, trampled grass, the faint sourness of old sweat in leather straps. Everything warms at once. Somewhere to your left, a conch groans awake. Another answers it. The sound rolls over the field, deep and vibrating, like it's pressing the air flat. You sit up, with grit stuck to your cheek. Your mouth tastes like yesterday. Armor creaks as men stand. Horses stamp and blow, offended to be alive this early. Someone tries to tighten a belt with numb fingers and drops the buckle twice, cursing under his breath like the buckle has personally betrayed him. The camp begins to move, not with courage, with habit. And as you walk out toward the open ground, you can feel it. Today is different. The air is too still between the conch calls, like the world is holding a breath it doesn't plan to release gently. Ahead, the armies form like two weather fronts meeting. Banners lift, standards sway. You catch flashes of gold on spearheads, a smear of red cloth, the bright eye of a painted emblem staring across the space between. The ground is hard underfoot, packed by 10 days of wheels and hooves and running feet. It gives nothing back. A few crows hop close, bold as tax collectors. They tilt their heads as if they've been invited. Then the chariots begin to roll. You hear them before you see them. Wood rims biting into earth, the steady clatter of harness rings, the occasional snort of a horse that wants to go faster than dignity allows. And then, like a mountain deciding to move, Bhishma comes forward. His chariot is familiar now in the way a storm cloud becomes familiar. The banner above him, the way men unconsciously step back, not even noticing they've done it. He stands tall, white hair bright under the morning sun. Armor fitted to an old body that refuses to look old. Bow in hand, not shaking, not hesitant. For 9 days, he has been the shape of inevitability. Today he looks calm, not relaxed, not softened. Calm in the way a river looks calm just before it drops into a gorge. You feel your throat tighten as the plan rises in your mind again. Shikhandi in front, Arjuna behind, a doorway made of vows. Krishna's chariot waits nearby, horses tossing their manes, impatient. The smell around Krishna is always the same: dust, leather, and something faintly sweet, like crushed basil under a heel. Arjuna stands with Gandiva in his hand. He isn't trembling exactly, but the muscles in his jaw are set so hard you can almost hear them grinding. You're close enough to see the quick rise and fall of his chest, close enough to feel the heat radiating off the horses, their bodies already warm, already ready. This is the moment You can feel it pressing on your ribs, like a hand saying, "Now." Shikhandi steps forward. No trumpet flourish, no grand announcement. Just a warrior walking out in front, shoulders squared, eyes fixed on Bhishma's chariot. Armor plates catch the light in sharp flashes. The air around him seems to tighten, the way cloth tightens around a pulled knot. On the Kaurava side, there's a stir. Men shifting, muttering, craning their necks. Because they all know. They all know what Bhishma said he would not do. Bhishma's gaze lands on Shikhandi, and you see it. So small, you almost miss it. A pause, not fear, recognition, like an old man seeing the face of a debt he has carried for years. Bhishma lifts his bow. Then, slowly, he lowers it again. It's not dramatic. It's worse than dramatic. It's quiet. The kind of quiet that makes the hair on your arms lift. He will not strike, not today, not at Shikhandi. The battlefield, which has never lacked for noise, seems to hesitate, confused by the sudden decency in the middle of madness. Arjuna's chariot rolls forward behind Shikhandi. Krishna drives with the same steady hands he uses for everything, as if guiding a chariot between armies is no more troublesome than steering around a puddle in a village lane. Arjuna raises Gandiva. The first arrow leaves the string with a sound like a snapped thread. It flies clean, then another, then another. At first, it's almost polite, measured, like a man knocking on a door he wishes would open itself. Bhishma doesn't move to answer Shikhandi. He cannot. He will not. So Arjuna's arrows begin to find their way. 1 becomes 10. 10 becomes a steady rain. You hear them? Thin, fast, relentless, like dry reeds whipped through the air. Bhishma remains upright. For a moment, it looks as if nothing can change him. He is still Bhishma, still that pillar of the Kurus, still the man who taught princes to hold their bows, to plant their feet, to breathe through fear. But then you notice the slight hitch in his stance, the way his chest rises, then steadies, the way his eyes soften, not in defeat, but in something that looks dangerously close to relief. As Arjuna shoots, the world narrows to a few sharp things. The bowstrings hum, the horse's breath coming out in hot bursts, dust rising in pale sheets under chariot wheels, and the sun climbing higher, turning every helmet into a small, cruel mirror. Shikhandi keeps advancing, a shield no one can strike through. Arjuna stays behind him, protected, doing what he has been told must be done. You're standing there with thousands of others, watching the impossible happen in ordinary increments, arrow by arrow, heartbeat by heartbeat. Somewhere, an elephant bellows, offended by the whole arrangement. A man near you laughs once, high and strained, the wrong sound at the wrong time, then clamps his mouth shut like he's afraid the laughter will bring a curse. Bhishma finally lifts his bow again, not toward Shikhandi, but out to the side, losing arrows at others who press too close, as if to remind the world he is still himself. Even now, he fights like a master. Even now, he refuses to be helpless. But Arjuna's focus doesn't break. The arrows keep coming. Bhishma's armor begins to look different, not torn, not ruined, but crowded with shafts, like a tree trunk bristling after a storm of thorns. His hands remain steady longer than seems possible. Then the old man sways, just a fraction, as if he is listening to something very far away. You can almost imagine it, the river Ganga murmuring in his ears, the echo of vows spoken in youth, the weight of years settling at last into a single point. Bhishma's knees bend. His chariot jolts slightly as his weight shifts. For a heartbeat, You think he will sit, dignified, even in ending, settling down like a king onto a throne. But fate doesn't offer a chair, it offers a fall. Bhishma's body lifts from the chariot, not thrown, not flung, lifted as if the world itself has decided to set him down elsewhere. Arjuna's arrows keep coming, careful now, controlled, no wasted motion, a craftsman finishing a terrible work. And Bhishma descends, except he doesn't reach the ground. The arrows meet him, they take his weight, they catch him. He lands on a bed made of everything that was meant to bring men down, and instead holds him up. His back does not touch the earth, not even his heels. He lies suspended a hand's breadth above the dust, supported by shafts of wood and iron, the way a saint in a painting floats above the floor. Impossible, unnerving, utterly real. You feel the sound leave the battlefield. It doesn't fade, it stops. Conches go quiet, mid-breath. Horses stop stamping. Men who have been roaring for 10 days swallow their voices like children caught misbehaving. Even the wind seems uncertain what to do. Bhishma lies there, eyes open, face turned slightly toward the sky. And on that face, sunlit, lined, unshaken, you see it clearly now. Not triumph, not bitterness, a kind of peace, arriving late, but arriving all the same. Arjuna lowers Gandiva. His shoulders sag as if someone has finally cut the rope that kept him upright. Krishna doesn't move the chariot forward yet. He lets that silence exist. Because some silences are not empty. They are full of everything men cannot say. You find yourself walking without deciding to. Many do. On both sides, warriors step forward as if pulled by the same invisible thread. Enemies a moment ago, now just people drawn to the fallen grandsire who belongs, somehow, to all of them. The ground near Bhishma is littered with broken arrows, snapped shafts, churned earth. The smell is dust and metal and warmed leather, with the faint sweetness of crushed grass that never had a chance. Bhishma's gaze shifts slowly, taking them in. He doesn't look like a man begging for help. He looks like a man receiving guests. Someone rushes forward with cushions, soft, embroidered, absurdly polite, in the middle of Kurukshetra. You can almost hear the thought behind it. Make it comfortable, make it less terrible, make it look like anything but what it is. Bhishma's mouth curves, just slightly. It's the gentlest kind of humor, the kind an elder offers when everyone around him is panicking. A warrior does not rest his head on velvet, not here, not today. His eyes move, searching. They find Arjuna, and with the smallest tilt of his chin, he asks, without needing to speak much, for a pillow worthy of a fighter. Arjuna's hands tighten on his bow. Then he nods once, like a man accepting a task he doesn't deserve to be given. You watch him step closer, the dust puffing under his sandals. He draws a few arrows from his quiver, with fingers that still know exactly how. He plants them into the earth with care, not hurried, not sloppy. 1, 2, 3. He arranges them beneath Bhishma's head, making a support of straight shafts and sharp points, turned harmless by purpose. An arrow pillow, a pillow no palace could provide. Bhishma's head rests upon it, and the old man exhales, slow and controlled, as if settling himself for a long wait. The sun climbs, light pours over the field, turning armor into dull bronze, turning the dust into gold haze. Men stand with hands hanging uselessly at their sides, not sure whether to mourn, salute, or step away. The war, this roaring, trampling, relentless thing, has been forced into stillness by a single body that refuses to touch the earth. You're close enough now to hear Bhishma's breath, not ragged, not failing, steady, measured, as if he has simply chosen a new way to lie down. His eyes remain open, bright under heavy lids, and you realize, with a shiver that has nothing to do with morning cold, this isn't the end, this is only the stopping. Bhishma, held up by arrows, held up by vows, held up by will, lies between earth and sky like a bridge no one knows how to cross. Around him, thousands of men stand quiet, suddenly aware of how small their shouting has always been. And beneath him, the dust waits, patient and unchanged. But it will not have him. Not yet. Not today. His body doesn't touch the ground, not while he's still choosing to breathe. He fell on the 10th day. He didn't pass from the world until the 58th. And the first strange thing you notice, once the shouting has thinned and the chariots have rolled back, is the sound of him still breathing. Not the battlefield's breathing. Horses, men, flags snapping like whips. Bhishma's. A slow, steady rhythm, like the tide at a riverbank. The sun keeps climbing, indifferent and bright, and it lights the arrows under him so they look almost silver at their tips. You're standing close enough to see the dust clinging to his eyelashes, close enough to smell the warm iron of weapons nearby, the sour sweat of men who have forgotten how to sit down, and the faint sweetness of crushed grass beneath thousands of feet. Bhishma lies there like someone who has simply refused to get up from a meeting. And somehow, the meeting has to continue around him. They bring soft things first, cushions from royal tents, folded cloth, a pillow that still smells of sandalwood oil. Servants approach carefully, as if the air itself might break. Bhishma looks at the softness, and you can almost feel his amusement travel through the crowd. He makes it clear, without drama, without anger, that he won't rest his head on comfort now. A warrior doesn't finish his long duty on something meant for a palace nap. So the cushions are carried away again, very quickly, by servants who suddenly remember other urgent tasks. Someone brings physicians. You can hear their bracelets clink as they kneel. Hear the little metal tools in their pouch. Hear them whispering the way people do around a sleeping tiger. They peer at the shafts, at the way Bhishma hangs above the earth, held in place by points that should have ended any ordinary man. They want to pull, they want to mend. Bhishma refuses them with that quiet authority that has always been his real weapon. No treatment, not now, not on this field. It would be like wiping sacred ash off your forehead in the middle of a ritual, wrong in a way you feel in your teeth. So the physicians back away, blinking in the bright light, their hands empty, and then comes the harder part. The war has to start moving again. Men glance at one another, waiting for someone else to be the first to leave. Even Duryodhana, even the princes who have spent days trying to bring the Pandavas down, stand stiff and uncertain. Because you don't just walk away from Bhishma, not when his eyes are still open, not when he lies there like a grandfather who has called everyone into the room and hasn't finished speaking. The conches are quieter now, not triumphant, not eager, more like reluctant reminders. Time. Command has to shift, orders have to be given. Bhishma cannot lift a bow, cannot mount a chariot, cannot cut through formations the way he did yesterday. And yet, his presence is heavier than any general's banner. So the kings and warriors approach him, one by one, like children approaching a teacher's desk after class. You can see the awkwardness in their shoulders. These are men who have been trying to bring down one another since dawn. Now they stand together in a dusty semicircle, helmets tucked under arms, eyes lowered, as if someone has suddenly turned the battlefield into a shrine. Bhishma blesses them, not with big gestures, with a steady gaze, a few calm words, a simple lifting of his hand. He tells them to do what must be done, and to do it with as much honor as a war can still hold. You're close enough to notice something startling. He doesn't sound bitter. He doesn't sound triumphant. He sounds relieved, as if the hardest part was not falling, as if the hardest part was holding himself upright for so many years, carrying vows like stone on his back. They set guards around him. Of course they do, as if anyone would dare disturb him. Still, duty is duty, and soldiers need something to do with their hands. They plant spears into the earth. They pace. They stare out into the haze as if guarding a treasure. And in a way, they are. A living legend, suspended between sky and soil, with the power to leave whenever he wishes. Day turns. Heat shimmers over the plain, and the air above the arrows wavers like a veil. The smell changes as the light slants. Less sweat, more smoke from cooking fires, more ghee and flatbread, as the camps remember they have mouths to feed. Somewhere a drum begins, then stops, like it too feels embarrassed. You can feel the grit of Kurukshetra under your sandals. It gets into everything, and yet, around Bhishma, people step carefully, as if the dust itself has become sacred. The next morning comes, then another, and another. The sun rises over the same horizon and drags itself across the same sky, day after day, patient as an old ox. From where Bhishma lies, he can watch the light move. He can watch shadows shorten. He can watch them stretch again. Sometimes clouds gather, and the heat breaks for a moment, and the wind brings the smell of distant water, river mud, reeds, that cool promise you can almost taste. Then the clouds move on, stingy, and the field returns to its harsh brightness. You're there on one of those days when someone finally realizes Bhishma must be thirsty. It's an obvious thought, and also somehow not, because he doesn't look like a man who needs anything. But even a great vow does not replace water. A servant brings a vessel. Another brings something in a gold cup, like offering a king a sip. Bhishma refuses that too, not out of pride, out of stubborn, maddening consistency. No luxuries, no special treatment that makes this feel like a palace. If he drinks, let it be the kind of water a warrior might find on a field, earned, taken, drawn from the earth itself. So Arjuna steps forward, and you can feel the whole crowd tighten, because Arjuna is the one whose arrows made this bed. His hands move, practiced and gentle, as if he's trying not to startle an injured animal. He fits an arrow to the string. He aims, not at Bhishma, not really, but at the ground near him. The bow hums, the arrow flies, it strikes the earth, and then, as if the plain itself has been waiting for permission, water springs up, a clear, cool stream glittering in the sun. It runs over the dust and turns it into dark, clean mud. You can hear it, that simple sound, water on earth, suddenly louder than conches. Bhishma drinks from that stream, and you can see his throat move, slow and steady. No hurry, no greed, just the calm acceptance of what the world offers when you ask properly. The war rages on beyond him. You hear it more than you see it now. The distant roar of crowds, the crack of chariot wheels, the deep thunder of elephants moving like living hills. Sometimes the wind shifts and carries a sharper scent, smoke, sweat, the wet metallic tang that always follows battle. Sometimes a cry rises and falls in the far distance, quickly swallowed by the plain. At night, the air cools, not enough to be comfortable, just enough to remind you that even the hottest day has to let go eventually. In the camps, men light lamps. Ghee flames tremble in the wind, making little halos that wink in and out. Bhishma's face is lit from below sometimes, and it gives him a strange, otherworldly look, as if he's already half a spirit, already halfway across a river no one else can see. Warriors come to him between battles, from both sides. Some come stiffly, like men swallowing pride whole. Some come as if pulled by childhood memories they can't outrun. They bring questions, not petty ones, not questions about formations or who has the sharper spear. They ask about duty, about vows, about what a king should do when his heart wants one thing and his throne demands another. They ask how to endure shame without becoming cruel, how to hold power without being poisoned by it, how to forgive your own hands. Bhishma answers patiently, the way a man answers when he knows he has no more need to impress anyone. His voice carries surprisingly well, even when it's low, even when it's roughened by days in the open air. It seems to reach exactly the people it's meant for. You can see men's faces change while he speaks. A jaw unclenching, a brow smoothing, a warrior blinking hard and looking away, pretending dust got in his eye. One day, someone arrives, trying to be helpful in the most irritating way possible. They come bustling in with supplies, blankets, shade cloth, even a small canopy, as if they're setting up a picnic beside a storm. The helpers fuss and argue in whispers, pointing at the sun, pointing at the arrows, pointing at Bhishma like he's a stubborn temple statue that won't accept their garlands. Bhishma lets them fuss for a moment. Then he stops it with a simple look. No canopy, no coddling. You can almost hear the unspoken thought in the air. If I can choose my end, I can also choose my discomfort. So the blankets are folded again, the canopy rolled away, and the would-be caretakers retreat, looking slightly offended. And life on the field continues to be exactly as it is, too bright at noon, too cold before dawn, too loud in the distance, too quiet up close. Then, one evening, the sound changes. Not the clash, not the cheering. A different sound spreads across the plain, like a hush rolling over tall grass. The war is ending, not in a single clean moment. It ends the way fires end. First, less roaring, then fewer sparks, then a lingering heat you don't trust. Word passes from mouth to mouth. Warriors stagger in with shoulders slumped, with eyes that don't seem to focus on anything nearby. Some are missing friends, some are missing brothers, some have won and look like they can't remember why they wanted it. The days after the war feel stranger than the war itself. There's no formation to hold you up, no trumpet to tell you where to stand. Just space, open, wide space, and the wind moving over it like it owns everything. The camps thin out, fires burn lower, crows gather at the edges, patient as temple scribes. And still, Bhishma lies on his arrows, still breathing, still watching the sky. The great kings come again, but now their feet are slower. Their faces look older. Grief has a way of making even young men look as if they've walked 1,000 miles. They come to Bhishma, not as commanders now, but as survivors, as sons, as men who have been emptied out and don't know what to fill themselves with. They kneel in the dust. They press their palms together. Some can't speak at all. Some try, and their voices break. Bhishma receives them the way the earth receives rain, without judgment, without hurry. He gives blessings. He gives counsel. He tells them what must come next, because life does not stop simply because war has finished with you. There are rituals to perform. There are widows to protect. There are children who will wake up tomorrow and ask where their fathers went. There are thrones that now feel like heavy stones. Night after night passes. The stars over Kurukshetra look cold and sharp, as if someone scattered salt across black cloth. Sometimes you hear jackals far away, their calls thin and eerie, and it makes the hair rise at the back of your neck. Sometimes you hear nothing at all but the wind and the distant murmur of the river. Bhishma's breath is still there, steady as ever. He is waiting. Not for rescue, not for forgiveness, for timing, for the sun's slow decision. You can feel it if you stand there long enough, the way the days tilt, almost imperceptibly. The evenings stretch a little. The mornings feel different. The light slants at a new angle, and the shadows of arrows look longer on the ground. Somewhere in that huge sky, the sun is preparing to turn. And Bhishma, Devavrata, the old man who made promises like other men breathe, keeps his eyes open. He rests his head on arrows. He listens to the world settle after its great madness. He waits for the auspicious moment he chose long ago. Patient as stone, bright as steel, suspended between earth and sky, while time itself walks slowly toward him. The camp is quieter now, not silent, never silent, but the sounds have changed. Less iron, more wind, less shouting, more low murmurs, like people are afraid to wake the ground. And that's when it slips in, soft as smoke from a dying lamp. So, after all of that, the vow, the war, the arrows, the waiting, this is what the ancient storytellers wanted to leave in your hands. Because you don't sit beside a man, suspended between earth and sky, for 58 days and come away unchanged. You feel it in your own bones. Even if you're only listening in the dark, you can almost smell that old battlefield dust, warmed by sun and cooled by night. And you understand, this wasn't only about who won. It was about what it costs to be right. Bhishma begins as something we all secretly admire. A young man on a riverbank, steady-eyed, making a promise so clean and sharp it could cut stone. No throne for me, no marriage for me, no children to carry my name, just so his father could have joy. It's so dramatic, you can almost hear the heavens pause, like an audience leaning forward. And at first, it looks like strength. It looks like control. But you sit with him long enough, through palace years, through that horrible day in the hall, through Kurukshetra, and you see what else it is. A vow is a door that locks from the inside. Dharma is the word everyone keeps circling, even when they don't speak it out loud. Duty, order, the shape of what you're meant to do. Bhishma clung to Dharma the way a drowning man clings to a plank, white-knuckled, grateful, desperate. He served the throne because that was his vow. He trained princes because that was his place. He stood in the assembly hall, heart burning, and still didn't rise the way you wanted him to rise. Not because he didn't know what was wrong, but because his dharma had become narrow, like looking at the world through a slit in a wall. And you can feel the ache of that, can't you? You're standing there in your mind, near the arrow bed, and the night air is cool against your face. You watch an old warrior's chest lift and fall, slow and steady. He is powerful enough to choose his final moment, and still, in so many ways, he is trapped. That's one of the hardest lessons tucked inside his ribs. Being good isn't always enough. Doing your duty isn't always wisdom. Sometimes duty, when it has no room for compassion and clear seeing, becomes its own kind of blindness. Karma moves through all of this like a river under the ground, not as a neat reward and punishment tally, more like a net. One knot pulled and 100 others tighten. Bhishma's vow wasn't only his, it rippled into the palace, into the next generation, into the way certain men learned they could do whatever they wanted and still be protected by elders who couldn't interfere. He never meant for any of that. But karma doesn't ask what you meant. It only asks what you did and what it set in motion. And then there's Maya, the shimmering illusion that makes the surface of things look like the whole truth. Kingdom, reputation, lineage, victory, all those bright banners on the field, snapping in the wind like they're eternal. And then, one morning, the earth is littered with broken chariots and abandoned standards, and suddenly all that grandeur looks like theater after the lamps go out. You can almost hear it, a far-off conch, echoing and fading into emptiness. Maya isn't fake, exactly. It's real in the way a dream is real while you're inside it. But when you wake, you realize how quickly it slips through your fingers. Bhishma woke slowly, not in one shining moment, but day by day, on that bed of arrows, with the sky turning overhead like a patient wheel. That's why the defeat holds such strange mercy. It sounds wrong to say it, until you really see him there, because the fall is the only thing that finally stops him. The only thing strong enough to interrupt his lifelong habit of obedience. In the middle of war, when everyone else is being dragged by fate like carts in mud, Bhishma becomes still. And in that stillness, something opens. He can speak freely. He can bless both sides without it becoming strategy. He can be grandfather again, not commander. If you were there, if you could walk across that brittle ground and kneel close enough, you'd notice small details. The faint scent of oil from someone's lamp, the dry rasp of cloth as a soldier adjusts his shawl, a marigold garland beginning to wilt in the heat, life continuing, stubbornly ordinary, beside something enormous. And Bhishma, with all his greatness, is finally forced into the one posture he avoided for decades. Not standing, not commanding, lying down, receiving. That's another lesson the arrows teach. Sometimes grace comes disguised as the thing you feared. Sometimes the only way to loosen your grip is for life to pry your fingers open. Arjuna learns something here too, even after all the teaching on the chariot, because it isn't philosophy anymore. It's his own hands that sent those arrows. It's his own eyes that watched a beloved elder fall. And afterward, there's no triumph in him, only that heavy human knowledge that some duties leave a bruise on your spirit. Krishna's part in it is sharp and steady, not cruel, just unblinking. He pushes the war forward because the world has reached a point where it won't untangle itself gently. And still, even with all that force, he doesn't steal Bhishma's last choice. That detail matters. Bhishma chooses the moment he lets go. Not because he's stubborn, because his whole life has been about will. And now at the end, will becomes something softer, not control, release. If you listen closely, you can hear the difference. In the way he speaks to the grieving, in the way he refuses the soft cushions, not out of pride alone, but out of a strange tenderness for the truth of what he is. A warrior, yes, but also a man who wants his end to match his life, clean, deliberate, awake. There's one more quiet teaching, and it's the one that makes people exhale. Even Bhishma with his iron vows and impossible endurance, does not hold on forever. He waits, yes. He times it, yes. But he does not cling past the proper hour. That's what it means to be strong in the way that actually matters. Not endless gripping, but knowing when the season has turned. So the arrows become more than weapons. They become a reminder, hovering there in the air with him. That duty without wisdom becomes a cage. That love without courage becomes silence. That vows can build a life and also shrink it. And that there is a way to let go without falling into fear. You can feel the night settling again as you sit with all of this. The breeze comes down from the open sky, cool for a moment, carrying the faint smell of river water and trampled grass. The stars hang overhead, unbothered by human victory and human ruin. And Bhishma is still there, breathing, waiting, not angry, not pleading, simply listening for the precise turn in the light when the sun begins its northward path and the long-held promise finally becomes gentle enough to set down. And then, after 58 days, the sun finally turned. You feel it before anyone says a word. The cold at dawn is different, less biting, more clean. The air over Kurukshetra tastes washed, as if the night has rinsed the field with invisible water. Even the smoke from last night's cooking fires rises straighter, pale threads climbing into a sky that's starting to soften at the edges. Somewhere far off, a conch sounds, not the battlefield roar from those first days, just one long breath, like a reminder that the world still knows how to sing. Men begin to move through the camp with a careful hurry. No one is joking now. Even the soldiers who've learned to laugh at anything, dust in their teeth, armor rubbing their skin raw, the endless complaints of hungry horses, walk quietly, as if they're entering a shrine, because in a way, you are. Bhishma still lies where he has lain all this time, lifted from the earth on that strange, unwavering bed. The arrows have dulled in the sun. Their shafts look almost like dry reeds now. But he remains bright-eyed, held between earth and sky with the patience of a mountain. When you step closer, the smells meet you. Sandalwood paste from offerings, ghee from lamps, and underneath it all, the plain scent of trampled grass and cooling dust. The wind brushes your cheek, carrying a faint wetness, river-scented, like distant rain. The great ones come first. Yudhishthira arrives with that heavy gentleness he carries, as if his feet are always mindful of what they might crush. Arjuna is there too, quieter than you've ever seen him, his gaze flicking once to the arrows and then away, like a man looking at his own handwriting on a terrible letter. Bhima's shoulders are rigid, his breath loud in his chest, the way it gets when he is trying not to break something with his hands. Sometimes the thing is an enemy, and sometimes it's his own grief. Even those who once stood on the other side come. The war is finished now. Whatever bitterness is left has nowhere useful to go. They approach Bhishma the way men approach a fire that has burned for so long, it feels eternal. And you, standing among them, close enough to see the fine dust settled in the lines of his face, can sense the moment tightening, like a bowstring drawn and held. Above all of you, the sun lifts, not rushing, not blazing, just rising with a calm authority, shifting its path, northward at last, Uttarayana. Bhishma's gaze follows the light, and something in his expression changes. Not relief, exactly, more like recognition. He seems to take in the faces around him: students, rivals, sons of friends, sons of enemies, and then the wide sky beyond them, endless and indifferent and strangely kind. His voice, when it comes, is low and steady. He blesses. He gives final instructions, brief and clear, the way he always did, like a man placing weapons back on a rack after a long campaign. If there is any regret left in him, it is folded away neatly, not flung into the air. Someone brings water, someone brings flowers. Marigold orange glows against the grey of ash and dust, bright as small suns in human hands. Then Bhishma grows still, not rigid, not strained, simply still, the way a lake becomes still when the wind finally stops. You can hear the soft stir of cloth as men kneel, the faint clink of jewelry against armor, a horse snorting somewhere behind you. The world feels suddenly enormous and hushed, as if even the birds are holding their breath. Bhishma draws one slow inhale, and then, without drama, without any outward struggle, he releases it, one breath leaving, one promise fulfilled. For a heartbeat, it feels as if the field itself exhales with him. And then the air changes again, cooler, wetter. A scent rises that doesn't belong to dust or smoke. River mud and lotus, deep water, and reeds bending under moonlight. You don't need anyone to announce it. You know. Ganga is there, not as a rumor, not as a far-off sacred name. There is a presence at the edge of sight, like a silver veil drawn across the morning. The warriors, men who faced charging elephants and storms of arrows, lower their heads the way children do when a mother enters the room. She comes to receive her son. No loud wailing, no theater, just the hush of something ancient arriving to take back what was always hers. The air trembles with the soft sound of flowing water, even though the river is not right beside you. It is as if the world remembers its own source. Bhishma lies quiet now, and for the first time in so many days, the arrows seem less like a miracle and more like ordinary wood and iron. Their work is finished. Hands move gently around him. The warriors lift offerings. Some close their eyes. Some stare openly as if they're afraid to blink and miss the last shimmer of him. If anyone speaks, it's barely more than a breath. One of those half-formed sentences that means everything and explains nothing. You catch a single murmur from someone behind you. At last, no one corrects him. The sun continues its northward climb. Later, there will be rites. There will be fire. There will be ash carried on wind. But for now, it is only this: the pale gold morning, the long field quiet at last, and the space where Bhishma's will had held the world in suspension. You linger as people begin to drift away in small groups, slow as pilgrims leaving a holy place. Footsteps press into the dust, cloth whispers. Somewhere a lamp is snuffed, and a thin thread of smoke curls upward and disappears. When the crowd thins, you can see the bed of arrows more clearly. Shafts angled like reeds in a riverbank, iron points dulled by sun and time. A strange little forest grown from war, and as the day warms, as the wind shifts, you can almost imagine you hear it, far off beyond tents and broken chariots and the scattered remains of banners, the steady, patient sound of water moving toward the sea. The arrows will rust, the field will green again after rain, and the sun, faithful to its turning, will keep traveling north.